Want to stay up to date with everything that's happening on the show? Or do you have a story that you'd like to submit for one of our Listener Stories episodes? You can get in touch with the show via the website at www.hauntedukpodcast.com, on Instagram at hauntedukpodcast, on X at hauntedukpod, or you can email us at contactus@hauntedukpodcast.com. We're also on Facebook and TikTok. And if you want to support the show, you can do it via either Patreon or Ko-fi. Both platforms have exactly the same content, but work in slightly different ways. One of the advantages of Patreon is its sleek user interface, but if you want to avoid those pesky additional charges Apple, Google, and Patreon apply to your subscription, then why not give Ko-fi a try? Simply open a browser window and type ko-fi/Haunted UK Podcast. That's Ko-fi/Haunted UK Podcast, and you'll soon find us. Whichever platform you choose, we're sure you'll enjoy the bonus content. Thanks for listening, and enjoy the episode. This is the Haunted UK Podcast's Short Haunts. Welcome, dear listeners, to our series of short haunts. A shot of scary, just for you. So grab a hot chocolate, maybe a tea, maybe something stronger, because this is Haunted UK Podcast's Short Haunts, The Shadow in the Cemetery. As teenagers, many of us have had experiences which have in some way shaped our lives a little. A memorable holiday, perhaps, a special friendship, happy memories of those days when you and your friends would gather and spend as much time together as possible, knowing that in just a few short years, you would become an adult and everything would change. But what if one of those memories wasn't entirely happy? What if it was terrifying? What if you'd experienced something that would end up being so burned into your memory that you couldn't forget it, even if you tried? This is an experience our listener John once had. Way back in the hazy BMX-loving days of 1984. So let's turn back the clock and go back to then and let John tell us his frightening, life-altering tale. So, where to start? I'm not a person who usually generally emails shows or podcasts, but I stumbled upon yours and have been enjoying it immensely. The stories of other people's experiences have much impressed me, and I feel it's time to tell mine. And considering it's been nearly 40 years, the images still seared into my memory as clear as it happened yesterday. Now, I've only ever discussed this event with the person involved on only a couple of occasions over the years, and for him to recall the event exactly as I remember it just confirms to me that what we witnessed was indeed something truly terrifying and life perception changing. Now, before I start, I need to give some context and background to the event that, from that day in 1984 forward, has totally changed my view on the paranormal. That is, going from a complete non-believer skeptic to being 100% convinced that something is out there and is happening to people every day. Be that a glimpse in the corner of your vision, a funny feeling, hearing strange noises, things moving, taps turning on occasionally on their own to a complete full-body apparition, which is what happened to me and my closest friend, and even as I type about it now, it still holds a certain apprehension in recalling it. I grew up in a town called Chatham in Kent, and I still live in the area today. As this was back in 1984, I was 13 at the time, and things were different. As kids, we would never be in, always messing about in local parks, or woods making camps, fires, in old disused Napoleonic vaults of which there are several in the area. We'd spend countless hours exploring underground tunnels and hidden rooms, and we would always be generally together. I had a close circle of friends, but it was Paul who I was closest to. Now, Paul was older than me by 4 years, but we were like brothers. We'd grown up living 4 doors from each other and were always getting into trouble for doing things we shouldn't, like scrumping from local gardens, smoking, and doing general teenager stuff, I would say. Where we lived, there were lots of alleyways between the houses and roads, which ran parallel to each other, but the main one, where we spent much of our time on our BMX bikes building jumps, was what we used to call the Cutway, which was a rough tarmac road, just about wide enough for a car to pass through, which led to 2 sets of garages. One set we used to call the New Blue garages were on the left, but on the right were old garages. The Cutway then led from our road to the main road of Chatham Maidstone. Across from this was, and still is, the Chatham Football Ground Park, which, like I say, we always used to be messing around in. Now, to the west of the football park is the old cemetery which, back in the day, we used to explore and mess about in, and generally treated as an extension of the main football park. This cemetery was full of very old gravestones, the type with big carved statues on, like angels and crosses. Plus, the graves all had full surrounds built around them and were situated close together, not like the new graves, which just consist of a headstone marking the plots. Now, also within the cemetery was what looked like a small church, and next to that used to be a greenhouse area, which, like all greenhouses, had become the target from time to time for all the kids in the area, so to say it wasn't in the best of shape was probably an understatement. Due to it being in the 80s, the era of the BMX bike was a really big thing, and like everyone else, I was right into BMX jumps and going to areas that could be used as such. As teenagers, we didn't used to worry about where these areas were. As long as they could be used, that was fine by us. It just so happened that within the old cemetery, the smooth roads and an area approximately the size of a football pitch was not used for graves. This had the perfect approach of tarmac road, then a grass bank and ramp for us to use and practice jumps over, which we used to do all the time. And not just my friends, but all kids from the area used to use it. Now, it was in the summer of 1984 when me and my friend Paul had, like most days in the summer, just been kicking around the local area. By midday, or close to it, we found ourselves sitting in the old cemetery at the top of the grass bank, where we used to jump the BMX bikes. We were just talking rubbish and smoking a cigarette between us, and I remember it was warm and sunny, and just a great summer day for the UK. We'd been there for close to a few hours when, at the exact same time, we both had the same feeling and looked around to our right. Coming from the direction of the greenhouse and small church was a figure. We both instantly got a feeling that screamed at us, "Let's go, it's time to leave." We got to our feet and I picked up my bike. On this occasion, Paul didn't have his bike with him, but we both started walking away from the grass ramp to the tarmac. It was around this time that we both looked back in the direction of who we assumed was the caretaker. But what we saw definitely wasn't a caretaker. It was the jet black shadow of a human male. We could see that this form was wearing a top hat and long coat to its knees, but what I noticed, and what Paul also confirmed to me after the event, was that it had no detail to it. There were no facial features or detail to the clothes, and this became more apparent as it changed direction towards us. We both instantly started to move faster, with me riding my bike, quick, and Paul to my left-hand side running. I looked back again, and it was coming directly for us, making its way through the tightly packed graves and gravestones. Even though we'd started moving really fast now, we couldn't seem to distance ourselves from it. And what struck me, and still does to this day, is that as I looked for a third time, the dark shadow looked like it was floating through the graves, not moving up and down or left to right to dodge them, but just gliding through them. It soon started to catch up with us and was within around 30 to 40 feet. It was at this moment that sheer panic and fear set in, and I know that Paul felt the same, because he began to sprint flat out. And he wasn't a slow coach, as he used to run for Kent as a sprinter. We both quickly made our way along the top cemetery road, which runs to the edge of the cemetery and to the main road of Chatham. I was pedaling as fast as I could, with Paul keeping pace as he sprinted like mad. As we approached the cemetery wall, I looked back one last time to see that the shadow was now just 20 feet back. And still, as clear as day, the tall top hat, the dense darkness of the shadow itself. I couldn't see any legs on this thing or see them moving. They just weren't there. I can't put down in words to express the terror and fear that I felt that day. The word panic just doesn't seem enough to describe it. It's still there! As we quickly approached the railing on the wall perimeter to the cemetery, I didn't even try to slow down or stop. I just jumped off my bike, still going fast, and threw it over the fence onto the main road. And then jumped, landing in the road myself. We were both completely freaked out as we headed for the cutway back down to our homes. We made it back down the cutway and just couldn't understand what we'd seen. We talked about it in the aftermath of the event, but like I said earlier, only a couple of times. It would hardly be mentioned or talked about as the years went by, and it was probably around 10 years before it was discussed again in conversation, which would always start with, "Do you remember that time that thing chased us out of the old cemetery?" That would be it. Even to this day, I haven't been back to the old cemetery and have no intention to do so. But I do still visit the area a lot as my parents still live in the same house, on the same road. The area and the neighbours have all changed now, but the cutway is still there and brings back lots of great memories. But from time to time, that dark memory surfaces, just to remind me sometimes that life can change in an instant, and we should never take life for granted, no matter how sunny the day might seem. Now, although the original events took place almost 40 years ago, there is one other experience I had which I feel links directly to the shadow in the cemetery, and this happened just a few short weeks before I sent the story to your show. I've always been into motorsport, and through the years I've raced and run many bikes and cars. I'm in the fortunate position of now owning 2 cars, one of which is what I call my daily driver, just used to commute and as a runaround, and the other is what you might call my pride and joy. As previously said, the large alleyway in which we all used to mess around and make bike jumps and camp led to 2 sets of garages back in 1984. Now though, the old set of garages which was located on the right have been sold and 3 houses have been built on that parcel of land. What we used to call the new blue garages are still there, and it's in these garages my car is stored for most of the week. I go to get the car most weekends when the weather is fine, using this as a reason to also visit my parents. It might just be a coincidence or something else at work. I really don't know, but it was on a Sunday evening after I'd popped in to see my parents. I said my goodbyes and hopped into my car to drive it the very short distance to my garage down the cutway opposite, like countless times before. The area has never really bothered me before, and I'm more than happy walking around there in the dark. But this time was different. Like always, I parked my car in the garage, shut the door, and put all the locks on. As I turned to walk away back to where I just drove in, I can only describe a feeling of an acute awareness, a real heightened sense of something that felt very wrong. It was an instant feeling, and within this split second, the hairs on the back of my neck instantly stood up. I had a massive urge to look back towards my garage and the pitch-black cutway, and being the person who always pays attention to such feelings, I did indeed look back. And as I spun around, I saw something. As I mentioned, the cutway is very dark and is only illuminated by one small streetlight. It also leads to the main Maidstone Road, and it was just as a car drove past the top of the cutway that I saw what I can only describe as a jet black shadow in the shape of just a head and torso of a human-like figure. But it was at a low level, as if it was half in the ground or sitting down. I couldn't see the bottom half of this figure at all. I stood there, just looking and waiting to see if the next car which drove past would reveal the shadow again. Being a bit older now and more confident to confront whatever it was that I was looking at, I watched as another car passed, but it revealed nothing. Whatever the shadowy figure was, it was now gone. But maybe it was the same jet black shadow that Paul and I had encountered nearly 40 years previously. Maybe I'm wrong, and it was something completely different, but I can't help thinking that because I'd relayed the story to your show, it somehow triggered me to relive the experience all over again, and in turn awaken my senses to the things around me. You may call it coincidence, or my imagination playing tricks on me, but I find it very strange that at that precise moment, in that exact place, I saw what I felt could have been the same entity from all those years ago. P.S. From my mate Paul, forever in my thoughts. See? I told you I'd tell the story to someone that might listen one day. Rest in peace, my friend. See you again someday. Thanks. John Bradley. An extremely creepy story, I think you'll agree. What was this mysterious figure roaming around that old cemetery? And who was it? A possible resident who was buried in the grounds hundreds of years ago? A spirit with a sinister past, looking to attack and frighten anyone who dared to set foot in that cemetery? Who knows for sure? But what can be said for definite is that whatever this eerie shadow figure was, it certainly seared itself into the memories of the 2 witnesses. So the next time you're out, taking an innocent walk around a cemetery, always keep on the lookout for anything out of the ordinary. A shadow lurking, silently watching, or perhaps the briefest glimpse of the brim of a top hat. And if you see that, may I suggest you exit fast. because the next person who could be the subject of a short haunt could be you. Do you have an interesting story which features the paranormal? If so, your story could be featured in our series Short Haunts. Please get in touch via email at hauntedukpodcast@hotmail.com, on Twitter at hauntedukpod, or on Instagram at hauntedukpodcast. We're waiting for your stories. This episode was presented by Steve, produced by Pink Flamingo Home Studio, and the script was edited by Marie Waller Proofreading. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the show.